So today, what you're going to be doing is wrapping up Module 12. Now, if we weren't in class together, this would have been set up as stations for you guys to work on, and we would have rotated each one. That being said, I think the best way to do this would be for you guys to follow along with me. I would think that the best way to do it would be to try it on your own and then check your answers. So I am going to do these, but I'm going to do them the way that I do in the lesson where I have you practice a question yourself. So what I'll do is I'll tell you that we're going to do the first section for the first lesson, and then you guys can pause it and try it on your own, and then you can compare it to my answers. And that way you get a pretty good, more of a review than anything else, okay? If you want to even try the whole thing yourself and then check your answers, that's fine. But definitely just make sure you do check your answers, because I am noticing a few people not watching the videos because they feel confident, and then there are lots of mistakes being made. So make sure you do check out the video at least a little bit to make sure you're doing everything right. So for this one, I will just have you pause and then you can check. So for lesson 12.1, the first thing that we talked about was graphing on the coordinate plane. So for the first lesson to wrap up, I'm going to have you graph each of these points. And the only other thing that I'd like for you to do is next to each one of these points, I would like for you to tell me which quadrant each one is in. Which quadrant, okay? Ready, set, go. Okay, so here's all the points. Point A, -2 and 4 is in quadrant 2. Remember, they go counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Point B is at 3, 5, so you'll notice, of course, GoMath is always leaving blanks for us. In this case, they're going up by 2. So 3 and 5 are going to be halfway in between. So 3 is here and 5 is here. So B should be right here, and that's in quadrant 1. Point C is at 6, -4. That's quadrant 4. D is -3, -5. So that's -3, -5, right about here. Quadrant 3. And by the way, if you ever see a point that has both numbers negative, that's automatically in quadrant 3. 7 and 2, both numbers positive, would be quadrant 1. So 7, halfway between 6 and 8. And 2 is E, that's in quadrant 1. And then finally, point F, the first number negative, second number positive, means it'll be quadrant 2. And that's -4, 6, which is right here, 2. Just remember that when you plot your points, you need to label them. So if they have a letter, you label them by their letter. If they don't have their letter, then you write the actual point. Okay, let's look at 12.2. Everybody's favorite, the independent and dependent variables in tables and graphs. So in this section, this lesson, what we learned about was how to identify which variables are the independent and which ones are the dependent variables. The one thing that I think you guys missed from the lesson, not everybody though, because I do check when I look at the homework, I am actually looking at it. I'm giving you guys grades for completing it, not based on accuracy. But I do look at them, and I did notice that a lot of you guys did not remember what I said. The independent variable, if there is anything that relates to time in any way, it's always the independent variable. So if it's any kind of measurement of hours, minutes, seconds, anything like that, it's automatically your independent variable. And the dependent variable is just what is being determined based on the independent variable. So this one is not going to deal with time, so you're going to have to think about it. John buys packages of pens for $5 each. What's going to be the independent variable and what's going to be the dependent variable? Okay, so pause, give it a shot, and then you can come back and see your answers. Okay guys, so the first step for these is to figure out what are the two variables in the situation. So what I did was I wrote them out for you. So the first one is the number of packages of pens that John buys, and the second one is the amount of money that he pays. So sometimes the hardest part of these problems is figuring out what those two things are. So if you think about it, the number of packages that he buys is not going to depend on how much he pays for them. The amount that he pays depends on how many he buys, right? So because the amount of money depends on how much he buys, that means that the amount of money he pays is your dependent variable, depends. So the independent variable is the number of packages of pens. Okay, let's take a look at 12.3. Okay, so in this lesson, we practiced writing equations from tables. Okay, so all you're going to do for these, or skipping all the extra stuff that we practiced before that, you know, coming up with the rules and everything, we're going to skip over that and just go straight to writing the equations. Remember that we're looking how to get y from x. So before you start, we want to know how to get y from x. On your homeworks on this topic, most of you got these pretty much, but I did notice a few people making some mistakes, so make sure you look carefully throughout the entire table to make sure you're doing the right rule. And also make sure that you're writing your equations with the y and the x in it. All right, so pause it, give it a shot, and check your answers. Okay, guys, here's the solutions. So for number 8, to try to get from x to y, I noticed that I can multiply each of these x's by 7 to get to y. And you just want to check the whole thing to make sure that you don't make a mistake, because sometimes the first one might look like addition or multiplication and the rest are actually different. So make sure you check each one. 3 times 7 is 21, 5 times 7 is 35, 8 times 7 is 56, and 10 times 7 is 70. So the rule, I just wrote it down to hopefully help a little bit, is in order to get y, I just multiply the x by 7. So to write that now, in algebra, we do not do y equals 7 times x, right? We do y equals 7x. And make sure you guys are writing the coefficient before the variable. There was quite a few people on the homework who wrote the variable before the coefficient. You don't want to do that. Also, make sure that you're writing the actual equation. We're not just saying, oh, the rule is multiplied by 7. They want the equation. The equation is y equals 7x. And for number 9, excuse me, sorry. When like the first thing doesn't always make sense, try to look for something that's easy to tell. You know, 10 to 22 and 20 to 32, they're more obvious if you're not good at doing arithmetic in your head. But you can see to go from x to y, you're just adding 12, right? So the rule is add 12 to x to get y. So that as an equation would be y equals x plus 12, okay? Remember, it's not y equals plus 12 or the rule is add 12. It's y equals x plus 12. That's how we do this, okay? Okay. Last but certainly not least was 12.4, and that was representing algebraic relationships in tables and graphs. So what I'm going to have you do is remember that I want to tell you to set up an XY table, okay? Or an input-output table. I don't know when I ever write my x's like that. So x, and just going to help you remember, and your input, or whatever you want to call it, is x plus 3 here. And then your point x comma y. Okay, now if you guys are making your tables another way, that's fine, okay? It doesn't matter to me. I am going to leave it up to you which numbers to use here. Okay, so remember, in order to take an equation and graph it, you make a table, plot your points, get your points, sorry, and then plot them on the graph. Okay, so take a second to try these two. Okie dokie. So for the first equation, y equals x plus 3, I started with 2, 4, 6, 8. I ended up including the 0 because once we got to the 8, we realized that the answer, the y value, was too high up on the graph. So we couldn't plot that point. So I decided, you could have left it just 3, but I decided to include the 0. Just to remind you, you plug in your x values into the equation to get your y value. So when I plug in 2, I got 5, which made my point x, which is 2, comma y, which was 5. So it was 2, comma 5. I plugged in 4 and I got 7, so that was 4, comma 7. Plugged in 6 and I got 9, so it was 6, comma 9. And then when I did 8, I got 8 and 11, which was not on the graph. So I decided, you don't have to do this, but I decided to plug in 0 and I got 3. And that was my line. And for number 11, this was a fairly easy one because you can see that each time it's going up by multiples of 5. So remember, this is 5 times x. I started with 0 here. 5 times 0 is 0, so that was 0, comma 0. I plugged in 2 and I got 10, so that was 2, comma 10. Plugged in 4 and I got 20, 4, comma 20. Plugged in 6 and got 30, 6, comma 30. And then finally plugged in 8 and I got 8, comma 40. Okay, guys, so that's it for Module 12. That's our wrap up. If you were able to get all of these right on your own, and you're awesome. Tomorrow we're gonna actually already be reviewing because we're gonna be taking an online test. This is gonna be open notes. I am gonna say that I suggest that you guys try the test on your own if you feel confident enough, because this whole situation is so crazy what we're doing right now. I feel that I would like to give you the opportunity to use your notes if you feel like you've been having difficulty learning this way, because I do understand it's such a big difference. But if you do feel confident enough, then I would say yes, try it on your own as though we were in class. And then if you find that you're struggling, you can always return to your notes for a little bit of assistance. Okay, so this is it for today. All right, have fun.